Today I'm going to tell you a story so haunting, it lingers long after the last word, set against the vast, unforgiving American West, where endless plains shimmer under a merciless sun, and silence can feel louder than gunfire. It's a place where danger and destiny collide, where a single moment can decide who lives, who dies, and who is forever changed. It all began with a simple journey west, an ordinary decision that would tear one life apart and rebuild it in the most unexpected way. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The Texas plains in the summer of 1865 rolled out wide and sun-bleached beneath a sky so open it felt like it could swallow a person whole. Tall grass bent and shivered in the wind, moving in long, restless swells that reminded Etta Crowley of the Atlantic she had crossed as a girl, back when her family still believed the new world would give them something better than grief. The Civil War had ended only months earlier, but peace had not followed it west. The frontier was raw, and unsettled soldiers drifting home to ruins towns, clawing their way back from Ash and Comanche bands, riding freely across land the government claimed on paper, but could not truly hold. It was a season balanced between collapse and rebirth, when the old rules were breaking apart and new lives were being forged out of dust and blood. Etta was 23 years old, and already a widow, her marriage cut short before it had ever learned how to breathe. Rowan Crowley, her husband of 6 months, had been killed at Appomattox in the war's final hours, a cruel twist of fate that left her with nothing but a folded condolence letter and a battered trunk that still smelled faintly of gunpowder. Virginia had offered her nothing but blame. His family held her responsible for his enlistment, and her own kin had been scattered by war and loss. She came west because there was nowhere else to go, because the frontier promised anonymity and the fragile hope of becoming someone not entirely shaped by mourning. The attack came on the third day of her journey from San Antonio to Fort Worth, exploding out of the afternoon heat in a roar of hooves and cries that shattered the quiet like a rifle shot. After that, her memories broke apart into pieces. Silas Boone shouting a warning, Nora Klein screaming, the coach lurching, rolling, the violent jolt that threw Etta into the grass as the world turned upside down. She remembered the sky spinning, remembered being lifted by unfamiliar hands, remembered the strange weight of a body draped over a horse as pain swallowed everything else. Then there was nothing. She woke surrounded by shadows, the color of honey and smoke, light filtering through stretched hide and wooden poles. The air smelled of leather earth and unfamiliar herbs. Sounds drifted in and out, voices too distant to grasp the low crackle of fire. Her head pounded a deep grinding ache behind her eyes, and when she tried to rise, the world tipped violently, forcing her back onto thick furs. A face came into view, close enough to steal her breath. He was Comanche, and there was no mistaking that. And he studied her with dark, steady eyes that held no obvious malice, no easy kindness. It was the look of someone measuring a situation, weighing a life, deciding what it meant. She did not feel hunted. She felt examined. He looked to be around 30, his features sharp and deliberate, as if carved from the same hard stone as the canyon walls she had glimpsed days earlier. Long black hair framed his face, threaded with feathers, she would later learn, marked his standing among his people. His body was lean, built for motion rather than labor, and scars crossed his arms and chest, quiet records of battles survived in a world that gave no mercy. "You're awake," he said. His English carried an accent, but the words were careful practiced. "Good. I was beginning to think you might not come back at all." Etta tried to answer, but her mouth was dry, her tongue useless. He lifted a water skin and supported her head while she drank. The water was cool, tasting faintly of leather, and she swallowed greedily until he pulled it away with a soft murmur of warning. "Where am I?" she rasped. "What happened to the others, the driver?" "You're in my village," he said. "In the canyon the white men call Paladuro." His voice stayed even. "The others are dead. You survived because you fell beneath the wagon when it overturned." There was no triumph in his tone, no apology. Just truth. "You've been unconscious for 2 days. I wasn't certain you'd wake." Grief hit her like a wave. Edgar Klein, who had shared his biscuits. Nora. Bennett Cole, the young soldier heading home. Silas filling the miles with stories. All gone. And she was still breathing. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you save me?" He was quiet for a long moment. When she opened her eyes again, she found him watching her with an intensity that prickled her skin. "I don't know," he said at last. "When I saw you lying there, still alive, something told me not to leave you for the birds. Maybe the spirits have plans I can't see. Or maybe I simply didn't want to see that face destroyed." He stood and moved toward the entrance of the lodge, and paused and looked back. "My name is Ashira. You're in my home under my protection. Rest, heal. When you can stand on your own, we'll decide what comes next." The days that followed blurred together pain and recovery, bitter-smelling medicines, half-remembered dreams. Ashira came and went with quiet regularity, bringing food and water, changing the bandage at her temple, speaking little, but observing everything. Other women visited too, their reactions ranging from open suspicion to reluctant care. They spoke in a language Etta did not understand, yet their hands were sure efficient bridging the gap where words could not. She learned time by the shifting light through the hides, by the sounds of the camp beyond the walls, by the rhythm of Ashira's presence. She learned how close she had come to dying, how bleeding inside her skull had made survival uncertain. And she learned that Ashira had relied on the knowledge of Tova, the medicine man on remedies and rites passed down through generations to pull her back from the edge where death waits. As her body grew stronger, her mind sharpened with it. Questions began to spill out of Etta Crowley, tentative at first, then more insistent, and Ashira answered them with a patience that rose and fell like the fire between them. She learned that his band had struck the stage routes for months, lifting horses and supplies, sometimes taking captives who could be traded or ransomed. She learned that Ashira was not just a warrior, but a war chief respected for both nerve and judgment, and that 3 years earlier, sickness had taken his wife and child. He had not chosen another woman since. She also learned that her presence in his lodge had stirred unrest. Some warriors believed she should be killed or sold, others trusted Ashira's word without question. One evening, when she was finally strong enough to sit upright and eat solid food, she spoke what had been weighing on her. "What happens to me now?" she asked. "You said we would speak of my fate when I was well. I think I am well enough." Ashira sat across from her, the small fire throwing gold across one side of his face and shadow across the other. He watched her eat with an attention that should have unsettled her, yet somehow made her feel protected, as if his gaze itself stood guard. "There are 3 roads," he said carefully. "First, you could be handed over to the Mesa brokers. They deal in captives. You would be sold South Mexico, maybe New Mexico. Life would be harsh, but you would live. Second, you could be ransomed back to your people if there were anyone willing to pay." He paused. "You have told me there is no one." The fire popped softly. His expression shifted just slightly, a fracture in the calm he had worn since she woke. "The third road," he continued, "is to stay. To live among my people. Learn our ways. take your place among the women of the camp. Another pause longer now, and to become my woman, if you chose it. Etta stared at him, certain she had misheard, certain the lingering fog in her head was playing tricks on her. Your woman, she said slowly. You mean your wife? Among my people the words are not so rigid, Ashira replied. But yes, my wife. I'm white, she said. I don't belong here. Your people, especially the women, they look at me like I'm something the desert spat out to poison their stores. Why would you want me? Ashira did not answer at once. His dark eyes held hers across the flames. When he spoke, the control in his voice had thinned, revealing something raw beneath. When I first saw you, he said, lying in the grass with blood in your hair, barely breathing, I felt something I had not felt since my family died. It was as if the spirits moved through me, telling me this woman mattered. I told myself it was foolishness, a lonely man grasping for meaning. But I watched you heal. I watched you face fear with steadiness, not screaming or begging. You asked questions. You looked at my people with curiosity, not hatred. He leaned forward, firelight tracing the hard lines of his face. You are not like the other white women I have seen. You try to learn. You show respect even when it is not returned. There is strength in you, Etta, more than you know. And I want to know all of it. Not for weeks, for years. Her heart thundered in her chest, heat rising to her face. This was impossible. This was the kind of story told in cheap novels, not something meant for widows who had already buried love once. And yet, here he was, the man whose people had killed her fellow passengers and saved her life in the same breath, looking at her as if she were something rare. I don't know how to be a Comanche wife, she whispered. I don't know your language, your customs. I would be a burden. You would learn, he said, as all do. Some women would teach you gladly. Others would not. And I am a patient man. I have waited 3 years to feel anything beyond anger and loss. I can wait longer. And if I say no, she asked. For a moment, pain flickered across his face before it vanished. Then I will honor that choice. I told you from the start you are under my protection. That includes the right to decide your own fate, even if it is not the one I want. Etta looked at him, at a man who could have commanded her, and instead offered truth. She thought of the world she would return to, poverty, suspicion, a life defined by absence. And she thought of the life before her, harsh, dangerous, and terrifyingly free. I need time, she said at last. Time to understand what I'm choosing. Can you give me that I can give you whatever you need? Ashira replied. Time, space, honest answers. Ask whatever you need, Ashira told her. I'll give you the truth, as I know it. He rose and headed for the lodge opening, then paused. I'll sleep elsewhere tonight. You should have quiet to think. He looked back, those dark eyes deeper than the firelight. Don't wait too long, Etta. The world is shifting. My people are changing. Doors like this don't stay open forever. He left her there alone with the fire burning low. Etta sat listening to the pop of embers, her thoughts racing through futures she had never dared imagine, her heart thudding with feelings she believed had died with Rowan Crowley. What followed was a courtship, unlike anything she had known, nothing like her restrained English girlhood, or her brief practical marriage. Ashira kept a careful distance, never touching her beyond what her healing required. Yet he was always there, steady, present. He answered her endless questions and slowly unfolded the world beyond the hide walls. He showed her the horse herd, the tribe's greatest wealth, thousands of animals in colors and patterns she had never seen. He taught her to ride bareback, guiding her, until she learned to move with the horse instead of fighting it. He led her through the canyon that cradled the village, its walls painted in reds and creams that glowed at dawn, and shared the stories his grandmother once told of spirits shaping the land as a gift to their people. He introduced her to the elders who carried memory and law, Keru and Mael to Tova, whose knowledge had saved her life, and to children who trailed her with wide eyes, curiosity slowly overtaking fear. When some objected to her presence, voices like Rask and the harder edge of Dorn Ashira stood firm, answering challenge with authority and words, not steel. Others like Vael watched her with cautious approval. And little by little, Etta found herself falling in love with a life she never sought, and with the man who had drawn her into it. She loved the freedom of the plains, the way open space could make her feel both small and whole. She loved the steady rhythm of work that mattered and rest that truly restored. She loved the women who began to accept her Sina among them, teaching her to tan hides, prepare meals, and care for children who seemed to belong to everyone. She loved the night sky, unbroken, from horizon to horizon, crowded with stars so bright she understood why people once searched the heavens for answers. And she loved Ashira with a depth that both terrified and changed her. She loved his patience and strength, his quiet humor, his gentleness with children, and his fierce devotion to his people. She loved the way he looked at her, as if she were the answer to a question he had carried his whole life. As if her presence were a gift he still didn't fully believe. The night she chose was washed in moonlight, the canyon silver and still. Ashira brought her to a place his people held sacred, a high ledge where visions were sought and lives decided. They sat side by side, not touching, watching campfires below glow like fallen stars. "I've decided," Etta said softly. "I want to stay. I want to be your woman. I want to learn your ways and build a life here with you." Ashira turned hope flaring in his eyes, even in the dim. "You're certain you understand what you're leaving behind?" "I'm leaving nothing that matters," she said. "My old life was hollow duty and expectation with nothing inside. Here with you and your people, I've found purpose, belonging, a life that's more than survival." She took his hand, feeling the warmth and the calluses earned by a warrior's years. "I want to be your wife. I want children if the spirits allow. I want to grow old with you, watching seasons turn and the world change. I want everything you offered me that first night. I want you." Ashira lifted her hand and kissed her palm, a simple touch that sent a shiver through her. "Then you shall have me, all of me, as long as I breathe." He faced her fully, and she saw it, the strength, yes, but also a vulnerability that matched her own. "There's something I must say, something true, since the moment I found you. Tell me. I love you, Etta Crowley, not because of spirits, not because you're the first since my wife. I love you for who you are, your courage, your curiosity, your refusal to be broken. Let me spend my life proving it." Tears slid down her cheeks, joyful tears, the first she could remember. "I love you too," she said. "I tried to fight it. Told myself it was gratitude or fear. It isn't. It's love, real and stronger than anything I've known." She leaned toward him, drawn by something deeper than thought, and their lips met, gentle at first, then surer, sealing everything they had said. As the careful distance between them finally burned away, the heat, and that had been building since the first day, surged forward and claimed them both. When they broke apart at last, breathless and close foreheads touching, Ashira let out a sound that was half a laugh and half a prayer. "I've wanted that since the moment you woke, and looked at me like I was something you meant to understand," he said quietly. "And I've wanted you to want it, since the instant I knew you wouldn't harm me, since I saw the kindness, beneath the warrior. Etta Crowley smiled a light, unguarded smile she hadn't worn in years. "So what happens now?" she asked. "How does a Comanche courtship go from here?" Ashira drew back just enough for her to see the shift in his eyes, the spark that made her skin tighten with anticipation. "Now I take you back to my lodge," he said. "We begin the life we chose." His voice dropped rougher, closer. "Tomorrow there will be ceremonies. My people will welcome you. But tonight belongs to us." They walked down toward the village, hand in hand, the moon lighting the narrow path. The camp lay quiet below fires reduced to embers, families already asleep. Ashira lifted the lodge flap, and Etta stepped inside what would soon be her home, her heart pounding with nerves and want. The space was warm, the central fire still alive, shadows moving across the hide walls. She paused just inside, uncertainty washing over her. She had been a wife once, but that union had been obligation, not desire shared in silence with a man she barely knew. Ashira came to stand before her close enough that she felt the heat of him. He lifted her face in his hands, rough palms, gentle against her skin, his gaze steady and intent. "We don't have to do anything tonight," he said softly. "I've waited this long. I can wait until you're ready." "I am ready," Etta answered, drawing a breath. "I want this. I want you." Her voice faltered. "I'm just my first husband. Our wedding night it wasn't. We'll make new memories," he said, brushing his thumbs along her cheekbones. "Better ones." His voice lowered. "I want to honor you, Etta. To learn you, to show you what it means to be truly loved. Will you let me?" She nodded, unable to trust her voice. Ashira smiled, an open, almost boyish expression that softened the warrior's lines. He kissed her again, slower this time, and she answered by pressing closer, her hands against his chest. He undressed her with reverence, loosening the borrowed dress, peeling away each layer, until she stood before him in firelight and moonlight, seen without hiding. Her cheeks burned. "How is that possible?" she whispered. "How can you look at me like that?" Ashira lifted her chin, forcing her eyes to his. "You'll see," he said hoarsely. "Look at me. Stay with me." He shed his own clothing, revealing a body shaped by movement and survival, marked with scars that told their own stories. Etta let her gaze travel over him, understanding the gift he was giving her in return, being fully seen. He drew her down onto the furs, his body covering hers, and they learned each other slowly. He was patient, attentive, exploring, until sensation built and blurred her thoughts. "Eyes up," he murmured when she closed them, and she obeyed, watching his face as he watched hers, desire reflected back at her. That connection, steady, unbroken, felt deeper than touch alone. When they finally came together, Etta cried out, not from pain, but from the overwhelming rightness of it. They moved as if guided by something older than either of them, rising and falling, until the moment broke over them and left them tangled together, shaking and changed. "I love you," Etta whispered against his chest, listening to his heart race. "It frightens me." "Don't be afraid," Ashira said, pressing a kiss into her hair. "Be certain. Be joyful. Be mine as I am yours, for all the days we're given." They lay together as the fire burned low, and night deepened, dawn just beginning to brush the canyon walls with gold. Tomorrow would bring ceremony and a life that would be hard, dangerous, and full. But tonight was only this two people who had found home in each other, choosing love. Where the world offered fear, unaware yet of all that awaited them. There were raids and skirmishes, narrow escapes from soldiers, and clashes with rival tribes. There were births that filled the camp with laughter and losses that carved grief into the quiet. Some seasons brought abundance, others hunger. The land itself began to change the buffalo, thinning the soldiers, multiplying the old ways, buckling beneath a tide that could not be turned. And yet through every shift and every wound, the love that had sparked on a moonlit night in Palo Duro Canyon burned constant and unbroken. Etta Crowley learned the Comanche tongue until it came as naturally as breath. She earned respect among the women and trust from the elders. Ashira became more than a warrior. He grew into a leader who fought not only with strength, but with judgment, knowing when to strike and when to bend, keeping his people alive. Through trials that wiped others from the plains, when surrender finally came, when the last free Comanche were forced north to the reservation in Oklahoma, Etta and Ashira walked into captivity side by side. Their children and the Ashira line stood between them, heads held high. The officers who processed them could not understand the pale woman who spoke Comanche more fluently than English, nor the way she looked at her husband with unguarded devotion. Life on the reservation was smaller, hemmed in by rules and borders they had never known. Still, they had each other, their children, and memories of a freedom no government could erase. They aged together, watching the world reshape itself, holding fast to a love that had outlasted war loss and expectation. On the final night of Ashira's life, when time at last claimed the warrior who once seemed unbreakable, Etta sat beside him, his hand in hers, counting each shallow breath. "Do you remember," he whispered, "the night you chose to stay? The ledge above the canyon, when you told me you loved me?" I remember everything she said, pressing his hand to her cheek. Every word. You lifted my chin. You told me to keep my eyes up. You showed me what love could be, and you never stopped. And you showed me, he replied softly, that hope can survive anything, that love can grow where it should not, that a man who lost everything can find it again. His dimmed eyes met hers one last time. Keep your eyes up, my love, even when I'm gone. I will, Etta promised through her tears. Until we meet again. He smiled the same smile she had first seen by firelight long ago, and then his breathing stilled as the sun rose over the reservation. She buried him as close to the old ways as she was allowed. Etta lived 7 more years telling her grandchildren the Crowley kin, who their people had been, and how love had carried them through every boundary. When she died, she was laid beside him, and the sky that evening burned red and gold, a final farewell to 2 souls who had found each other against all odds and never let go. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blaze the trail. Subscribe, share. Leave your thoughts in the comments and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso legal/disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice imagery, and drafting as part of our creative process. But every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.